Welcome, everybody, to Freelance Writing Direct. I'm your host, Estelle Erasmus, the author of Writing That Gets Noticed, Find Your Voice, Become a Better Storyteller, Get Published, which was named by Poets and Writers a best book for writers. Every week, I speak with novelists, with authors, with writers of every niche to talk about their tips, their tricks, their strategies, and how the sauce is made, including creative advice. I'll talk about essays and articles and share my own experience from 3 decades of publishing. So join me every week and grow your business and build your craft with Freelance Writing Direct. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes. And follow along on Substack, where I share special clips for subscribers only at estelleserasmus.substack.com. Welcome, everybody, to this episode of Freelance Writing Direct. I'm your host, Estelle Erasmus, and today I'm delighted to have Tamara Cutler, and she's an award-winning screenwriter, storytelling coach, and developmental editor specializing in memoir and the adaptation of true stories. Her recent work centers on caring for her aging mother as an artist and expat, with essays published in literary and news outlets. She is currently writing I Won't Let You Die Alone, a reported memoir from the trenches of modern elder caregiving, forthcoming from Bloomsbury. She holds an MFA in film from NYU and a diploma in advanced creative writing, nonfiction, from Cambridge. She lives in Andalusia with her partner and their dog, Ragazzo. Welcome, Michelle.
Thank you.
Michelle, you have a lot of news recently, and one of your biggest pieces of news is that you sold your memoir, unagented, to a fabulous publisher, Bloomsbury. So can you talk a little bit about how that all happened, how it all came together for you?
Yeah, definitely. I like to work sort of backwards. So here I am today. It's April 2026 at the time. What had been a journey that began exactly 6 years earlier in April of 2020, which was I started writing the book based on what I thought was one storyline, which was of my aunt being found dead in her home. It was a gated community in Miami Beach, very hard to get into, but she lived there, we didn't know at the time, pretty much like a squatter in her own house. And she died of undiagnosed rectal carcinoma. And we were called, and when we came to find her, it was just this absolutely tragic, awful encounter. For my mother, it was her only sister, her younger sister. She had been trying to get her to move here to Spain for years, and we just hadn't seen her. Like, we just accepted the distance that she created, and we didn't question it. And we were scattering my aunt's ashes in a river because we couldn't bring them on the plane to bring them back here. So these are all like logistical details that come up in the book. The business of death is a big part of getting through death. And I said to my mother on the banks of Indian Creek, I said, "Mom, I won't let you die alone." And I did not know exactly how that was going to play out. We make promises like that, like, "I got you, bro," or "I'll never cheat on you again," or "until death do us part." Like, we throw these promises out and they feel so good and noble in the moment. But to actually fulfill the promise is a whole other way of living your life, right? It becomes a new way of living your life. You can't make a promise like that and then just be like, "But I'll see you on vacation," or "see you when I can fly in." You have to make decisions. And so that's when I'd made decision to move to Spain. I was a screenwriter in Los Angeles. My career was going, and I had a new relationship as well. And I sort of upended everything, brought it to Spain. I was on the forefront of remote writing, remote working. This was in 2010, and the death was in 2012. And I didn't know how to process that death because at that time as a writer, I was a screenwriter. So I started working on it more visually. Like I had documented a lot of in photography of the scene. Like I started thinking of it almost like a documentary. And I was collecting archival materials and I just began researching how does this woman, she's gay, she's an activist, she's an educator, she's completely off the grid, somehow just completely forgotten about, no health care, no nothing. That became my sort of focus. And that's what the book was about. So when I started in 2020, I was seeing the book as more like research nonfiction, narrative nonfiction. And as I was writing, and when I would share work in Cambridge or wherever I was taking a course, I did a lot of DIY MFA type of stuff. So I was working on that as the storyline and often was asked, where are you in the story? And I was like, what do you mean, where am I? I'm the narrator. I'm telling you what's happening. That's where I am. They're like, no, but where are you? And I thought, oh no, they want me to write a memoir. Like I thought I was writing, I was like, I'm going to write a nonfiction novel. So I then sort of took this very deep dive into memoir to really force myself to be more vulnerable on the page, to be more emotional, to share my revelations rather than sort of dictate them. So the whole proposal is built on the concept and the proof of concept, and then the one chapter of creative writing, one chapter which is about 3,000 words. As I was working on the book, I had this feeling that there was something missing, which was urgency. It was very much a nonfiction story, as if I were writing like historical nonfiction. I knew it was a good book from the idea. Always when I had a query letter and I took it to labs or workshops or agents to read it, I always got good feedback. I would say like 9 out of 10 times it was like, this is great, I would read this. But no answers to my queries. No answers, not even a rejection was happening to my queries.
How many did you send out?
I would say over all of the time that I've sent query letters, it would be definitely not big numbers, maybe like 20. I knew that what I was sending had value. I knew it was a good book. I knew it was a good pitch, and I knew the writing was good. And I can only say that because I knew when it was bad. I knew at times when it was bad, and when I knew that it was bad, I sought out people to help me. So I never ever just sat beyond a certain point on my own. Like, I'm just going to keep grinding away because I've been in the movie business a very long time, worked in advertising a very long time. There's a point at which you can have the best writing. But what was happening is that the book I was meant to write wasn't ready yet because the event in my life hadn't happened yet. So as I'm working on that book, my mother, who's a big part of that book because she's a big resource. I interview her a lot. She's a great character. Like people love her as a character in the book. She almost died last year. And all of a sudden, when I brought her home, my life completely changed into one where I became a caretaker. And that to me felt urgent. That story felt urgent in the times that we're living in now, with the specificity that I, as a Gen X person, raised by a mother who is like an iconoclastic artist, independent person, it's going to be a once in a lifetime sort of pairing of generations where it's parents who are fighting for their independence, civil rights, autonomy, raising children who are without helicoptering at all. Like children were just like, woo, we're out, never see parents. It's great. And then all of a sudden, these people are going to depend on each other.
So, what is the timeline now? You knew something was missing. You were the caretaker for your mother, and then you looked at your project with new eyes. You were like, okay, I have an urgency. I kind of have like a timeliness aspect to it. I still have the research. I still have the interviews. I still have my story. It has the cultural element added to it. And how did that change the framing when you pitched it?
So I was working with someone who I call the ninja, right? And he was helping me with my book proposal of the original story. And he's like, well, I think you could, and to be honest, I don't even remember now because the thing with my mom happened right in the middle of that, to where I said to him, we have to change the entire premise of the book. Something has just happened. I know in my heart of hearts that this is the story I was meant to write, and everything else was a pregame. And this is the real deal. And I just verbally pitched it to him. And he said, okay, that's interesting. And he very wisely said, you should break it into an A B structure. That the A structure chapters are your story, and the B chapters are research, interviews, thematically based on the storytelling that you're doing in chapter A. And I was like, okay, that sounds cool. I can work with that logically. That made it much easier to do the chapter summaries. It just made it much more achievable.
So it's braided.
It's braided. Yeah, it's braided.
So if there's like 20 chapters, 10 are memoir and 10 are the research interviews, the other aspects. Is there a propulsion to it? Is there a narrative arc to it?
There's definitely a narrative arc based on exactly what happened last summer, which was, again, instead of me digging into what happened in 2012, what I'm calling or even questioning writing memoir in real time. Memoir, by definition, implies time for reflection, like it's a reflection, like memory. Do have a lot written from memory, but I'm also in the moment recording every day what I'm thinking in that moment. I have so much happening in this moment that's critical.
The present day narrator is, very much a part of it, adding kind of that wisdom and that time has passed and this is what you now think. How did it come about getting Bloomsbury interested?
So my ninja, back to my ninja, he is published with them. And I didn't even realize, to be honest, when I reached out to him, that I don't think it's a service he does that he submits for people because you can submit for yourself. I did not know that before. I thought you had to go through agents all the time. I did not know that you could go directly to acquisitions editors.
My last agent for my writing book, I actually met the editor who ended up acquiring the book. The agent had worked with the editor, so I figured I'll take the agent on because the agent was interested, had sold writing books before. But I made the initial connection, which is really interesting, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. That's what I felt too. It's like you are always going to be your best agent. It doesn't mean you have all the contacts and you can do all of that. And actually, I was going to read something. This is from my journal in 2020, which I was looking at. I said, I realize that if I am to use all of my experience to my advantage, I have to think commercially about what I write and how to market it. I'd rather be a bestseller than a prize winner, and it's important to know that because my whole film career had been based on prestige projects, not commercial. So I thought I don't want to do that again here. I want to have a book that you can buy at the airport when you're at Logan Airport and you're going to fly to LA and you're going to read it on the flight and you're going to be like, "Oh my God, I got to share this with somebody." Like that was what I wanted. Now, it doesn't mean it's not literary on the line sentence level, of course, but I was thinking commercial marketing. So I figured an agent's going to slow everything down. So my ninja was helping me with my book proposal. I wrote all of the book proposal, but he is most certainly the one that said A B structure. And by the way, because I said I'm an expert as an American in Spain dealing with the healthcare system here, which is gold star, gold standard public healthcare. I am in a unique position to share this story to educate people on what social health care could be. And he said, why don't you take it bigger than Spain? Why don't you think about other cultures and other places? And I was like, no, no, no. I don't live in those places. I feel disingenuous to do that. He's like, yeah, but that's where research and interviews come in. I decided that because he's published books and I have not, that I would just do it. I said, okay, let's put it in the proposal. They may say, take it out. They may say, just do Spain. But to be honest, that was a huge part of the book.
How long was the proposal?
Maybe like 30 pages. not overly long. He said to me that he would like to, if it was okay with me, that he would like to submit the proposal on my behalf to Bloomsbury. And of course, I said, "Oh, that would be so nice. Thank you." So he did, and he submitted it to his editor, and she passed it on to a different editor at Bloomsbury who deals more with like health, parenting, sort of the subjects that were in my book. But when you're working with a big company like that, things can take months because what he said is a no will come quickly and a yes will take a long time. So we didn't get a no. We got a, I love this. How can we launch it successfully when she's not a celebrity, journalist, academic, or as huge platform? And also, what would be my methodology for the research? Okay, because I have never written a book before. So
And you're a screenwriter, you're not a journalist by trade, you're a screenwriter. So interviewing, research, knowing how to do that is definitely a skill set that's acquired.
it's a skill set that I had to figure out how to translate for a huge marketing department. Because what he was explaining to me was that she, the editor, was going to have to take this project to the meetings, the board, editorial board meetings. And it's not just if they like the writing, it's the marketing, it's publicity, it's money, it's everything.
They had to make a business case.
Exactly. So the more I began to understand that, the more I would write addendums. And I was like, I don't have platform. I have a Facebook and I have some social medias, and they're 1,000 or 2,000. That is not considered platform. But I wanted to show that I'm not starting from scratch. It's not like I have no chops. I had a Substack for a year that I did a project, an interactive project. So I did my best to show that I at least have some social media chops, but I've never tried to have a big platform. But then I figured out, oh, but I've been the guest, like I am now, on people who have huge platform. So then I said, oh, well, but I've been a guest on this podcast network that has 2.3 million subscribers, right? I converted the numbers of other people's platform to work for me. So that was one sort of workaround for that I came up with. The other was about networking. And because I've gone to more than one university and graduate school, all of them have their alumni newsletters and all of them want to promote their alumni. So anywhere I ever went to school and anywhere I took a workshop or anywhere I did anything that is also trying to promote their services, I listed that. So if it's writing workshops or online at Oxford, like I did some courses at Oxford, Cambridge, I'm a graduate from Cambridge. I still have all my mentors there, my people there, but I also have Curtis Brown Creative. Curtis Brown is a literary agency in the UK, and they have something called Curtis Brown Creative, which I'm an alum of that. And so during these years from 2020 to now, I made myself present in many of these places: Kenyon Review, Vermont College of Fine Arts Postgraduate Writers Conference, and mind you, all from the exactly where I'm sitting right now, because I have not been on a plane since 2020. I also made sure that I never spent more money than I could conscientiously attribute to this project. I would take my time, I would choose really carefully.
So you're very entrepreneurial. This is what I'm getting from you. You're very entrepreneurial. You're very good at figuring out resources and applying them as you go along. So you're with this publisher. You have to deliver it at some point. When do you have to deliver it?
November. So the Bloomsbury proposal was in a holding pattern because of the holidays of last year. So, and I had given her everything that I could give her. And then it was just a waiting game. And in the meantime, my ninja submitted to a handful of other publishers that he knew, with the understanding that you're not really supposed to do that, to go out to multiple publishers at one time. So I'm going to say, don't do that. but he has relationships with these people. So I was getting suddenly really glowing rejections from like HarperCollins, really big places. Glowing rejections meaning, I love this book, I would read this book, I need this book. She's not a journalist, celebrity, or academic, and it just won't even go anywhere in their orb, but love this. And I said, that's the best rejection I could get, whereas before I was getting nothing. And then I got an offer from an independent German press, and I really loved their catalog and I loved their artwork, and it's only two people. And she just made the decision like this because she doesn't have to take it to a whole board of people. But I kept saying, I just want to wait until I hear from Bloomsbury. I just want to wait to hear. I was advised, rightfully, not to nudge. I think there's this idea that like nudging people makes them have a FOMO or like the turn the fire on. But I think that only happens when you're talking about like six-figure deals. I'm not that. So as I waited, things timed out pretty perfectly that Bloomsbury came back and asked, does she have an agent? And that was the first indication that we might be moving forward to a contract. That's when I chimed in and I said, I am currently unagented, but I have a lawyer. I have an entertainment lawyer. And I think for them, they saw that as not having the agent involved meant that we could move quickly. And I didn't want to create obstacles for that quickness. My workaround was I contacted an agent. I'd taken a course with him at Jericho Writers, and he's an agent specifically for nonfiction, book proposals and nonfiction. And I had taken a course with him a handful of years ago. And I reached out to him and I was like, hey, look what's happening with Bloomsbury, thinking he might say, oh, I'd love to be your agent and help you through this. But he instead said, I also freelance as an agent. So if you want, I can help you negotiate the deal. And I would pay him something for that.
A freelance agent, would he get a percentage or would it be a solid just fee, you pay him and goodbye?
Yep, a consulting fee that was very, very low, a very, very low consulting fee. When I got the deal memo, I looked at it myself first because I wanted to understand it. And then I shared it with him and I said, here are the deal terms. These are the things that are important to me. Most important being retaining film and TV rights is always going to be more important to me because I already wrote the screenplay for this 3 years ago because it was my first attempt of telling the story was as a screenplay. At the exact same time this was happening, we took my mother to the hospital and it was an emergency. And we were there for 4 weeks in the hospital. And during that time, I received the deal. I negotiated the deal terms. I received the contract. I read the contract, fine tooth combed it, and I signed the contract together with my mother. And I was able to share with her the win that we got it. And I have a great video of her sort of blurbing the book for me, like just how excited she feels about the news. And I honestly thought that we were going to come home after that, and that would be part of the research of home care, bringing outside people in for home care. I thought that's a good part of the chapter. Unfortunately, my mom said, Mish, don't forget your manuscript, and then passed away. And so it was very unfortunate for my heart that she passed away. But she did at one point say to me a year or so ago, do I have to die for your book to have an ending? And I said, no. I was like, of course not. No, please don't. In some strange way, she heartbreakingly gave me the ending of the book. And I'm so grateful that this editor at the Bloomsbury pushed. She didn't know anything was going on. I didn't share what was happening. This period, which is definitely a period of mourning and massive sadness, all of it is part of my process for the book because this is the last chapter. I'm living the last chapter in this moment. So 85,000 words in 5 months is basically what I'm under contract to deliver. And I'm super excited about it. I don't have any fear because my greatest fear was my mother dying. So now I don't have any fear, So, and to me, it's like a way to commune with her. Like I get to spend the next 5 months writing this story, doing research, talking to people, and it's becoming what would be like therapy in a strange, in a way. And I think if I didn't have the book deal, I'd probably just be a very depressed big daughter, sad daughter.
And also, it's like you're able to be creative as part of the process now of healing. I'm very sad that she's gone, but you would have been very ensconced in, not only what a chapter would have been, but I mean, I have friends who have done the in-care, home care, not in Spain, of course, but it's very immersive. You have that creative space now to be able to write the book that your mom knew that you could write as well.
And she was an artist and she understood. She had always advised me, Mish, don't let other people's things get in your way, or don't become so attentive to other people's projects that you lose yourself. Ultimately, that warning is the midlife warning. If you take care of your parent, your aging parent, you will lose yourself in the process. That's what everyone says. That's the trend. And I'm here to say, no, you won't actually. You'll find yourself in the process. I am more myself for caring for my mother for intensively for 9 months, but really kind of side by side for about 15 years. I'm more who I am.
What advice would you give to somebody who is struggling to get their story out in the world and maybe, they're not a celebrity?
You have to know what your story is first. I always really back everything up to why are you telling this story? Not in terms of that you have to prove it to anybody, but you have to know it yourself why I am telling this story, because the road is long and hard, and it has to be something that you feel you'll want to keep falling in love with, like over and over and over again. I think just to even have the momentum to get things out there. I just personally feel that we live in a time where the barriers to entry are changing so rapidly that the only obstacle that can really be there is the one that you create for yourself. Like me, I realized my story, while it was good and interesting, wasn't urgent. And I had to find that urgency. And then my urgency is infectious. So it becomes someone else's urgency when they read it or hear about it. And then they feel they want to help me. But you have to, I feel, always look outside yourself, because you can only do so much yourself. You can only revise your materials so many times without having a reader, without having people that sit there and question your choices. And you have to defend your choices, not defensively, but defend your choices because you understand why you did them. You understand what they are.
I also think it's like to thine own self be true. And you were true to yourself. You were true to your vision, even as your vision evolved. And you were resourceful. And that's part of being an entrepreneurial writer and author in today's chaotic publishing world, because it's really a time of great transition where the old gatekeepers, there's power within their corporate structure, but there are other structures. And I'm starting to see that more and more and more. So I really appreciate your journey. I'm excited to hear more about it. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Estelle. Always good to hear from you.
Follow me at EstelleSErasmus.com on my website and on social media, which is Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter at Estelle S. Erasmus. And we're now on YouTube for Freelance Writing Direct. Follow along, and soon everyone will be reading what you're writing.